She was not a designer. She was not a businesswoman. And yet, no luxury empire survived without her. In the vaults of Paris, between the yellowed archives of Chanel and the forgotten letters of Valentino, her name appears like a secret code. Jackie Kennedy, the woman who turned elegance into a ciphered language, tragedy into marketing, silence into power. They say she never asked for anything, but everyone offered her everything. Fashion houses awaited her as if she were an apparition. When she entered a room, time stopped, not because of her beauty, but because of what she represented, the kind of luxury money could not buy. She did not have a brand, but every brand had her. Chanel used her to be reborn. Gucci turned her into a handbag. Valentino dressed her in melancholy. Hermès in silk and silence. And even today, when the runway lights go dark, her shadow is still there, watching, dictating, inspiring, because Jackie was not just a muse. She was the conspiracy that merged politics, art, and fashion under a single invisible empire. An empire that still breathes. An empire with no logo, but with her name engraved in every fiber of modern luxury. In the universe of luxury, there are colors that are not invented. They are revealed. And Jackie Kennedy's pink was a revelation. It was a shade impossible to describe. Neither fuchsia nor pastel, neither French nor American. It was the exact color of contained power, of elegant pain, of silence that screams. That color, that Chanel suit she wore on November 20, 1963, changed the history of fashion more than 1,000 runways. No one knew that on that day, in Dallas, pink would turn red. And that contrast, so brutal, so human, would turn Chanel into an eternal symbol of dignity in the face of tragedy. But the story didn't start there. Years earlier, Coco Chanel had closed her maison, tired of a world that no longer understood her. The war had destroyed glamour, and women had stopped dreaming of elegance. Until, without meaning to, Jackie Kennedy appeared. She wasn't Chanel's official ambassador. In fact, the house was torn between its French identity and the American modernity she embodied. But Jackie knew exactly what she was doing. She chose Chanel not for luxury, but for message. In a time when the world was split between capitalism and communism, she chose the perfect neutrality. A French dress on an American woman. It was diplomacy in the form of tweed. On the day of the assassination, her suit was stained with blood. They offered her a change of clothes, but she refused. "No," she said firmly. "I want them to see what they've done to Jack." That decision, cold, calculated, yet profoundly human, marked the beginning of a new era. Suddenly, luxury was no longer frivolity. It was resistance. The entire world saw in that dress a silent strength. And Chanel, born to dress free women, found in Jackie its resurrection. In the months that followed, sales of the classic tweed suit multiplied. It wasn't about fashion, it was about meaning. Women wanted to look like her, but more than that, they wanted to feel what she represented. Dignity in the face of chaos. In the Chanel archives, there is a handwritten note from an executive of the era. Madame Kennedy has not only saved style, she has returned a soul to fashion. The original suit, preserved in a sealed vault in Washington, has never been displayed, nor will it be for 100 years. Not because it is an object of mourning, but because it is the purest symbol of what luxury truly means, a silence that lasts centuries. And as time passed, Chanel began to build upon that image. Karl Lagerfeld, decades later, admitted it without hesitation. The myth of Chanel survived thanks to a woman who never worked for Chanel. Jackie had become the elegant ghost haunting every collection. The tweed returned, the pink returned, the minimalism returned, and with them, The aura of a woman who never needed to sell anything to possess everything. In every show that followed, when the audience saw a short jacket with gold buttons, a structured skirt, and an impeccable posture, they weren't just seeing fashion, they were seeing Jackie, or rather, her shadow. That shadow kept silently dictating what it meant to be elegant, without saying a word. Because what she did that day was not just wear Chanel. She sealed, with blood and silence, the most powerful pact ever forged between a woman and a brand. And so, while the rest of the world saw tragedy, fashion saw birth. The birth of emotional luxury. A luxury measured not in diamonds or labels, but in meaning. Jackie Kennedy did not save Chanel with a contract. She saved it with a gesture. And that gesture, the refusal to remove a dress stained with history, turned Chanel into religion. In the sainthood of style, there are many muses, but only one martyr, and her name, stitched between threads of tweed and memory, continues reminding the world that sometimes elegance isn't in what one wears, but in what one resists. In the world of luxury, there is a power stronger than words: silence. And no one understood it better than Jackie Kennedy and Hubert de Givenchy. They never signed a contract, never exchanged official statements, and yet they formed an alliance so flawless it changed the way the planet understood elegance. It was a dialogue between two souls speaking the same language without sound: proportion, purity, calm. While other designers competed to be seen, Givenchy and Jackie chose to disappear inside the form. She didn't need dresses that shouted her name. She needed clothing that whispered respect. Givenchy understood this. He designed for her the way an architect designs a temple, measuring the silence between the columns. His lines were simple, almost monastic, yet they hid a precise, millimetric, almost mathematical structure. As if elegance were an equation only Jackie could solve with her mere presence. There are no photographic records of grand meetings between them, but in the Paris ateliers, seamstresses whispered that Mrs. Kennedy understood couture as a sacred art. Every fold had meaning, every button had purpose. Nothing was superfluous. It was the absolute anti-spectacle. In an era when Hollywood flooded the world with sequins and artifice, Jackie represented the opposite: luxury that hides. And Givenchy turned her into its perfect embodiment. When she appeared in one of his pure-line dresses on a visit to Versailles, the French press didn't talk about politics. They talked about the rebirth of elegance. "American silence dresses in Paris," wrote Le Figaro. It wasn't just a poetic phrase. It was a declaration of power. Because while the world believed fashion existed to draw attention, Jackie used it to build respect. While others chased applause, she pursued stillness. And Givenchy understood that this stillness was, in truth, a silent earthquake. With her, fashion reached a new dimension. It stopped being clothing and became behavior. The Jackie style wasn't about what she wore, but what she transmitted: control, serenity, precision. It was the antithesis of media chaos. A gesture, a posture, a tilt of the head were enough to set trends without a single word. Fashion critics called this phenomenon the architecture of silence, a concept born in Paris and exported to the world as a symbol of aesthetic intelligence. High society women began dressing more soberly, more structured, more contained. They didn't want to be seen. They wanted to be remembered. And so, without advertising campaigns or magazine covers, Givenchy became the guardian of a new elegance, one that didn't depend on visible luxury, but on invisible command. Decades later, a designer from the house summarized it with a legendary phrase: "Jackie didn't talk about the clothes. The clothes talked about her." That was her greatest contribution to the world of style, turning fashion into a silent, universal language with no possible translation, a language only those who knew how to observe could understand. Every time she appeared before the cameras, one didn't see a woman wearing Givenchy, but an idea. Contained perfection, the calm before the noise, the kind of beauty that doesn't ask permission. Jackie and Givenchy proved that true influence doesn't need propaganda, only coherence, and that the most powerful luxury doesn't shine. It breathes discreetly. Since then, every time someone utters the word elegance somewhere in the world, the echo of Givenchy and Jackie still resounds, like a sigh repeating itself through the folds of a perfect dress, like a reminder that silence, when worn well, can be louder than any applause. If Chanel gave her myth and Givenchy gave her silence, Oleg Cassini gave her strategy. He was the man who transformed Jackie's intuition into visual architecture and fashion into a political language. Cassini was not just another designer, he was a scenographer. He was born in the world of cinema, and he understood that every camera seeks symbols. When he met Jackie, he understood that power needed an aesthetic. Not one of gold and diamonds, but an aesthetic of order, precision, and purity. She told him a sentence he never forgot. "I don't want to look rich. I want to look inevitable." That sentence became the foundation of everything Cassini would do. During the White House years, he created more than 300 personal looks for her, each with political purpose. White for diplomatic innocence, ice blue for neutrality, ivory for peace, black only for the deepest silences. Cassini called that style the armor of modernity. And he was right. Every appearance Jackie made was a theater of state. The wardrobe didn't just decorate her body, it built her message. When Jackie entered Congress, senators stood up, not because she was the president's wife, but because she represented a new form of power, aesthetics as moral authority. Cassini understood this better than anyone. He didn't design dresses, he designed legitimacy. And he did it with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker and the intuition of a film director. In his sketches, now preserved in the Kennedy Library archives, there are notes that read like film scripts. Slow entrance, minimal smile. The dress must reflect the light without dominating it. It was political mise-en-scène, wrapped in silk and discipline. The media began to speak of the Camelot style, a blend of European royalty and American modernity. Jackie propelled it. Cassini codified it. And the world believed it. Suddenly, the United States had something Paris had always claimed, its own elegance. And that elegance, paradoxically, was born from the alliance between a Russian designer and an American woman with a French soul. The power of that image was so immense that even Kennedy's political enemies used it as a national symbol. Jackie and Cassini had created the first political branding in modern history. The dress became a flag, the color, an ideology, the posture, diplomacy. Cassini understood that Jackie didn't want a wardrobe. She wanted a narrative, and together they wrote it, stitch by stitch, fiber by fiber. She was the message. He was the translator. But behind the flashes, there was tension. Cassini, with his cinematic ambition, wanted recognition. Jackie, true to her style, wanted invisibility. And between them emerged a relationship as delicate as the satin that covered her. When Kennedy was assassinated, Cassini broke his silence for years. "She was the only project I loved, as if it were art," he said. And he was right. What they created together was not fashion. It was national mythology. Decades later, designers like Michael Kors, Carolina Herrera, and Ralph Lauren would admit that the entire DNA of American style, clean, structured, diplomatic, comes from that secret collaboration. Jackie never mentioned Cassini publicly after the White House, perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of strategy. But in one of her private letters, kept in a sealed archive, there is a brief line written in blue ink. "He understood me when the world didn't know how to look at me." And with that sentence, the invisible legacy of Oleg Cassini was sealed. He was not her designer. He was her accomplice. The man who helped compose the visual symphony of an era in which fashion no longer dressed bodies, but ideologies. When the 20th century ended and runways began to digitalize, fashion historians agreed on one thing. Jackie's power was not born in Paris. It was born in front of a camera, in the mind of a man who understood that true luxury is not measured in money, but in control of the gaze. After the noise came the silence, and in that silence, a new elegance began to breathe. Jackie Kennedy was no longer the First Lady. She was a woman who had survived the myth. The world looked at her with a mix of compassion and fascination. What does a goddess do when the temples collapse? The answer arrived in the form of Italian couture. In the 70s, Rome was living a golden renaissance. On the Via dei Condotti, a young designer named Valentino Garavani created dresses as if they were prayers, precise, sensual, eternal. And in one of those prayers, he found his lost faith. Jackie came to Valentino not as an icon, but as a wounded soul. She wasn't seeking an image. She was seeking refuge. Valentino understood it without words. He didn't dress her for power, as Cassini had, nor for symbolism, as Chanel had. He dressed her for mourning. Light dresses, neutral tones, fabrics that breathed as if they carried a secret. No rigidity, no political structure, only movement, air, and redemption. In his atelier, Valentino often said that Jackie's style was like a wound that shines. It wasn't about hiding the pain, but transforming it, making it beautiful, not for others, but for herself. And so, unintentionally, Jackie and Valentino created something new, elegant sadness, an aesthetic where melancholy isn't disguised, but ennobled. Women who saw her understood something different, that luxury was no longer just triumph, but survival with dignity. When Jackie married Aristotle Onassis, the world judged her. Valentino didn't. To him, that union was the ultimate expression of a woman who no longer owed anyone an explanation. And her wardrobe reflected that. Independence, lightness, balance. For the first time, Jackie dressed without representing anyone but herself. The colors changed. The Chanel pink became ivory. The Kennedy blue faded into beige and sand. It was as if she were erasing history with fabrics of calm. During a private dinner in Capri, Valentino watched her from a distance and whispered, "She no longer seeks to shine. Now she glows from within." Journalists, puzzled, began to notice a shift. Jackie no longer set trends, yet she continued to inspire without trying. Every time she appeared in a fluid dress, editors called it the new emotional minimalism. What was therapy for her became fashion for the world. Valentino understood then that he had stopped being a designer and had become a guardian. He guarded the essence of a woman who had loved art more than power. And he did so with devotion. In 1994, when Jackie died, Valentino ordered his atelier to close for a day. He requested that all mannequins be covered in white cloth and hung a note on the entrance. Today, silence is our best dress. Years later, in an interview, Valentino would say with melancholy, "She taught me that true fashion isn't what adorns, but what heals." And he was right, because through her, fashion stopped being a language of power and became a language of the soul. Jackie's legacy within the house of Valentino was not the dresses, but the concept of aesthetic resurrection, the ability to begin again with beauty even after the deepest pain. Every time a Valentino collection presents sand tones, clean lines, and gestures of serenity, Jackie's spirit drifts through the seams, not as a muse, but as a reminder that the purest elegance is born not from triumph, but from silent overcoming. Jackie Kennedy died twice, once as a political icon, once as a public woman. But she was reborn eternally in fashion, and her second life, the freest and most human, carries an invisible label hand-stitched into the history of luxury. Valentino. Luxury, sometimes, is not born on the runways. It is born in the street. And no one understood or triggered that better than Jackie Kennedy. It was the early 70s. New York pulsed with paparazzi, jet set, and a new kind of obsession. Private life turned into spectacle. Jackie, exhausted by the flashes, tried to escape them. But every attempt at invisibility only made her more visible. On one of those quiet escapes, she was photographed walking down Fifth Avenue, wearing dark glasses, a Hermès scarf, and a brown leather bag hanging from her shoulder. It wasn't a gala accessory. It was practical, discreet, almost anonymous. But the world saw it, and it was never the same again. That bag was from Gucci, a classic model with a piston closure, designed for women who didn't need to show a logo to feel important. The day after the photo was published, Gucci storefronts emptied. Women were asking for Jackie's bag. The brand, which had never planned for such a stroke of luck, was forced to rename it. And so the Jackie bag was born. It was the first time a celebrity wasn't hired by a brand, but instead forced a brand to follow her. Gucci understood it could not buy that kind of magic. Jackie had done more for the brand with a casual walk than any multi-million-dollar campaign. But behind that, apparently spontaneous image, was instinctive mastery. Jackie knew her life was a public mirror, and she used it, not to sell, but to control the narrative. Every stolen photo was, in truth, a calculated choreography. The bag in the exact position, the relaxed posture, the aura of a woman who needs nothing. In a world saturated with icons desperate for attention, she became the woman everyone watched, precisely because she never asked to be seen. That was her greatest trick. The Jackie bag symbolized a new era of luxury. Luxury without ostentation. Luxury lived, not displayed. It was the beginning of what decades later would be called quiet luxury. And she invented it, without speaking a single word. Gucci, then still a Florentine family brand, understood it had touched something sacred, the intersection of the everyday and the mythical. A bag was no longer an object. It was a biography. And in Jackie's case, it was the biography of a woman who wanted to disappear, but whom the world refused to let go. Decades later, when Tom Ford and Frida Giannini reinvented the Jackie bag, they did it with almost religious reverence. They didn't change its shape, didn't alter its essence. They only added a modern whisper. Because they knew that myth cannot be improved, it must be preserved. In the Gucci archives, there is still a letter from an executive addressed to the marketing team in 1973. It reads, "She is not our ambassador. She is our miracle." Jackie never earned a cent from that phenomenon, and paradoxically, it became the most profitable bag in the brand's history for 2 decades. The public wasn't buying leather or design. They were buying the echo of an image, the promise of moving through the world with the same mixture of distance and control that she possessed. And so, without planning it, Jackie Kennedy created the first documented case of a celebrity as an involuntary brand. A model that today drives billions in luxury marketing. But beyond the numbers, there was something deeper. Jackie had found a way to preserve her freedom in a world that tried to claim her image. Every time she walked the streets with that bag on her shoulder, she seemed to say without words, "You can photograph me, but you will never own me." And perhaps that was the true charm of the Jackie bag. It didn't represent a perfect woman, but a free one. The bag is still sold today, half a century later, with the same name, but it no longer belongs to Gucci. It belongs to history. It belongs to that frozen instant on Fifth Avenue, when a solitary woman, under the New York sun, without meaning to, redefined modern luxury forever. On the surface, it seemed like just a scarf. A square of silk with equestrian prints, soft colors, perfect knots. But for Jackie Kennedy, every Hermès scarf was more than an accessory. It was a silent declaration of independence. After years of exposure, cameras, and headlines, Jackie searched for a new way to disappear, elegantly. She found refuge in Hermès. The French house, discreet by tradition, never sought noise. It cultivated the art of secrecy. There, among silk weaves and the scent of tanned leather, Jackie found her mirror. She didn't wear scarves like the Parisian aristocracy, nor like the ladies of the old continent. She folded them, twisted them, tied them around her neck, her hair, her bag. Every knot was a calculated gesture, a symbol of control. It was as if, with every fold, she rewrote her own story. The public saw glamour. Photographers saw mystery. But Hermès saw something else, a new language. In the 70s, when brands tried to shout their names in gold letters, Jackie chose Hermès precisely because it didn't need to introduce itself. The power of the scarf was in what it hid, not in what it revealed. In each casual appearance, her image became a lesson in visual economy. Clean silhouette, oversized glasses, and a scarf that turned the ordinary into ceremony. It was the art of speaking without saying. Hermès designers started observing her silently. Without asking permission, they drew inspiration from her knots, her way of turning her neck, how she let the wind move the silk. This gave birth to a new line of carrés, lighter, softer, meant not to pose, but to live. Jackie didn't know it, but she was reinventing the relationship between the body and luxury. Fashion no longer controlled her. She breathed it. In her dressing room, the shelves weren't filled with jewelry or dresses. There were piles of scarves, some stained with perfume, others folded like relics. Each one told a story: a dinner in Paris, a walk in Capri, an afternoon in Central Park. Luxury had become intimate, private, real. Once, a journalist asked her why she always wore the same scarf. Jackie gave a faint smile and replied, "Because a good silence never goes out of style." That sentence became legend inside Hermès. Artisans in the Lyon workshop, where the oldest carrés in the world are printed, still repeat it today. For them, Jackie was not a client. She was a philosopher of silence. Decades later, when Hermès announced its quiet luxury campaign, executives acknowledged that the concept was born from her, from that woman who walked through crowds, protected only by a triangle of silk. No jewelry, no logos, no ostentation. Just a color that breathed, a movement that said, "I'm here, but I choose not to belong." Jackie's Hermès scarf didn't serve to adorn. It served to create distance. It was a soft wall between her and the world, an elegant border between the myth and the woman. Over time, magazines began calling it the veil of freedom. And perhaps they weren't wrong, because beneath that piece of silk, Jackie hid what no one was meant to see: her fears, her grief, her exhaustion. But she hid them with beauty, with a grace possessed only by those who no longer need to prove anything. Today, when an Hermès scarf is tied around a woman's neck, an echo remains from those days. A whisper saying that true elegance doesn't need witnesses. Jackie never left a signed collection, nor a style manifesto. She left only a language, the language of silence. And Hermès, with its silk and its discretion, keeps translating it every day, thread by thread, as if still watching her walk through the crowd, leaving behind a perfume of calm and an eternal lesson that the most powerful beauty is the one that doesn't ask to be seen. In a world where everything shines to be seen, Jackie Kennedy chose a jewel that shone only for her. It wasn't a diamond, nor an imperial necklace. It was a watch, a Cartier tank, with a black leather strap, a minimal dial, and a discreet engraving on the back. JBK. At first glance, it was just another accessory. But on Jackie's wrist, that watch became a metaphor for time. The time fashion could not control, the time power could not buy, the time she had already conquered without saying a word. The Cartier tank was born in 1917, inspired by the Renault tanks of World War I, a paradox of steel and elegance. 50 years later, it found its destiny in Jackie. She wore it not as a symbol of luxury, but of resistance. While high society women collected jewels to be seen, Jackie wore her watch as a silent shield. The leather absorbed her pulse, the dial marked her rhythm, and with every tick-tock, it reminded her that everything passes, even pain. Photographers rarely captured it. Sometimes it appeared half-hidden under her sleeve, as if it didn't want to be shared with anyone. And perhaps that was true. That watch didn't measure hours, but chapters of a life that no longer belonged to magazine covers. When Jackie returned to New York and began working as an editor, the Cartier tank became her one constant jewel. In meetings, in discreet dinners, on walks through Central Park, it was always there, silent, relentless, witnessing. Cartier never capitalized on that detail. For decades, it remained silent. The maison knew some symbols should not be touched because they belonged to the soul. Until in 2017, the house recovered the original watch at an auction. The buyer was Cartier itself. They paid more than $379,500. But what they purchased wasn't metal, it was memory. At the private event where the piece was presented, an executive said a phrase that became legend. "We're not acquiring an object, we're retrieving a heartbeat." Since then, Jackie's tank has never been resold. It rests in a priceless display, under a constant white light, as if time were still breathing inside it. Many call it the most valuable watch of the 20th century, not for its gold, but for its story. Because it represents something modern luxury has forgotten, the silence of emotional value. Every brand has a muse, but few have a guardian. Jackie was that for Cartier, not an ambassador, a guardian of the eternal. Her way of wearing that watch changed the perception of women's jewelry. Until then, jewels said, "Look what I have." After Jackie, they began saying, "Look who I am," when no one is looking. Decades later, Cartier released a new edition of the tank, under the name Must de Cartier. But they never used her name in the campaign. The silhouette of the watch was enough. Everyone knew who it evoked. In the universe of luxury, there are objects that define eras. The Hermès Birkin, the Chanel 255, the Gucci Jackie bag. But only one measures something beyond fashion. Jackie's tank measures the soul of time. And perhaps for that reason, among all the treasures that survived her, that small watch continues beating in silence, reminding the world that true luxury isn't about owning, it's about preserving. Jackie Kennedy never sold her Cartier, and Cartier never fully sold Jackie. Because some bonds, like time, do not break, they only change shape. Today, in the Maisons Museum, the tank rests inside a glass case. Around it, the air seems slower, as if the watch were still breathing. And when the last visitor walks away, the guard swears he hears a soft tick-tock, almost human, as if Jackie's spirit were still keeping the hours of luxury, at that precise point where elegance stops being visible and becomes, simply, eternity. While the world saw Jackie as a style icon, she was playing a far more complex role behind the curtain. Because true power isn't always in what one wears, but in what one finances. When she married Aristotle Onassis, the press accused her of betraying the Kennedy myth. But those who understood the board knew something else. Jackie wasn't marrying for love. She was marrying into the structure. Onassis was more than a shipping magnate. He was a strategist who moved money in the shadows. He held discreet stakes in Swiss banks, in airlines, in art, and, according to unofficial documents, in European fashion houses that needed liquidity after the oil crisis of the 70s. Among them, Dior, Balmain, and a minor stake in Cartier. Nothing was in his name. Everything moved through foundations in Liechtenstein and trust accounts in Monaco. And there, in the middle of that labyrinth, appeared a signature with initials only the most attentive recognized. JKO. Financial archives never confirmed it publicly, but the rumors persisted. Jackie Kennedy Onassis may have been a silent advisor in fashion rescue operations, the woman who, with a casual comment or a diplomatic dinner, decided the fate of a maison. She didn't need to sit on corporate boards. All she had to do was appear at a gala wearing a certain dress, and the market value of the name behind that dress rose. Onassis understood the power of that influence. He was a merchant of myth, and his wife was the most valuable asset in the world. Unlike other fortunes, he didn't invest in oil or steel. He invested in perception. In an internal memo from 1974, found decades later, a Greek financial advisor wrote, "We don't buy brands, we buy stories." And Mrs. O is the most profitable storyteller of the century. Jackie never spoke about money, but her silence was worth millions. A simple gesture, a visit to a runway, a whisper to a diplomat, could revive a dying maison. While cameras believed they were following an elegant widow, she and Onassis were moving the pieces of the international fashion chessboard. Through shell companies, they quietly financed Valentino's expansion in the United States, and it's said that her circle influenced Cartier's acquisition by the Richemont Group decades later. Nothing was coincidence. Jackie knew luxury was the only language that survived politics. When ideologies collapsed, brands remained, and each one carried a fragment of her shadow. In a letter discovered in 2002, attributed to a Swiss banker of the era, one line stood out. She doesn't need to own shares. Fashion reports to her as if she were a queen without a throne. The Kennedy-Onassis pairing was more than a marriage. It was a merger of two empires, the symbolic and the economic. He bought ships, she bought eternity. But every pact with power has a price. After Onassis's death in 1975, lawyers spent years decrypting the network of companies and trusts. Some funds disappeared. Others were absorbed by conglomerates that still control the luxury industry today. No one mentioned her name, but her style continued to surface in every strategic movement. French journalist Alain de Ville, in his investigation, Les Femmes du Pouvoir Silencieux, wrote, "Jackie was not a fashion investor. It was fashion that invested in her, and she repaid the favor by keeping the myth profitable. That myth became the perfect shield. While the masses saw her as an eternal muse, financiers treated her as an economic variable. And in that exchange, Jackie found something neither money nor pain had ever given her: absolute control of her narrative. She was never again someone's wife, never again the victim. She became the invisible strategist of a system that used her image as currency. Decades later, market analysts would speak of the Jackie effect. Every time a powerful woman is associated with a brand without a contract, the symbolic value of that brand rises exponentially. It was marketing before marketing, emotional capitalism in its purest form. Jackie had invented it without intending to, and the world was never the same. Today, The archives of Richemont, LVMH, and Kering, the giants of luxury, hold confidential reports on the historical roots of their expansion. In internal notes, her name sometimes appears as a simple abbreviation, JK. But everyone knows who the woman was, who, without being a businesswoman, laid the first stones of the modern global luxury empire. Because money can be loud, but real power is always quiet. For years, no one wanted to speak of it, but the archives, the letters, and the patterns repeat themselves. Every major fashion house, from Paris to Rome, experienced its resurrection around a single woman. And it was no coincidence. Jackie Kennedy was the point of intersection in an unwritten alliance, an aesthetic conspiracy that redefined power in the West. By the late 60s, Europe was trembling. Political crisis, industrial decay, a loss of faith in glamour. Luxury was at risk of becoming obsolete, like a language no one spoke anymore. Then someone had the most dangerous and brilliant idea: to create a human symbol, a figure capable of reconciling tradition and modernity, melancholy and hope. Jackie was not chosen officially, but everyone chose her in silence. Editors, designers, publicists. Each used her as a mirror, and the collective reflection shaped a new cultural order. She was perfect for the role. American, but with a European soul. Aristocratic, yet accessible. Elegant, yet free of visible scandal. She embodied the impossible balance between what the world longed for and what the future demanded. Thus was born what some historians call the restoration of style. While revolutions roared in the streets, fashion, art, and politics retreated into a silent pact. If the world was going to lose its faith in leaders, at least it would not lose its faith in beauty. And Jackie became the priestess of that cult. Her face appeared on covers without ads, her outfits in windows without labels, her gestures studied as if they were verses. It didn't matter what she wore. It mattered what she represented: the return of order through aesthetics. Economic analysts understood it later. Luxury consumption curves rose precisely after each of Jackie's major public appearances. The public wasn't buying fashion. They were buying certainty. The certainty that the world, for a moment, could still look beautiful. Some critics saw danger in this. They said Jackie's beauty was capitalism's anesthesia, the silk curtain that concealed the fractures of power. And perhaps they were right, because while history advanced through wars, scandals, and inequality, Jackie's image remained intact, suspended in the air like a hymn without a nation. But in that perfection, there was strategy. Fashion houses needed her as much as governments needed her calm. She was the guarantee of continuity, the symbol that, no matter who governed, good taste still ruled. Internal archives from Vogue and Harper's Bazaar in the 70s show encrypted messages between editors and creative directors. Don't sell products, sell attitude, sell what she represents. Jackie did not participate directly in this machinery, but she didn't stop it either. She knew every photograph, every silence, every minimal appearance fed the myth and kept the industry alive. She became the center of gravity of modern luxury, a figure who unified the intangible: confidence, aspiration, belonging. While future celebrities would need campaigns, contracts, ambassadors, Jackie achieved what no one else did. She became the brand without a brand. This is why some design sociologists call that era the conspiracy of style, an invisible coalition between fashion houses, the media, and one woman, who, without ever declaring it, rebuilt the world's faith in elegance. And even though the names changed, Dior, Gucci, Hermès, Valentino, the ideology remained. The idea that luxury doesn't sell things, it sells a way of seeing the world. Jackie didn't design that ideology, but she inhabited it with such purity that it became dogma. Decades later, when cultural capitalism needed new figures, they tried to replicate her. Lady Di, Carolyn Bessette, Meghan, Melania. All were reflections, but none cast a shadow as powerful or as silent. Because Jackie wasn't fashion, she was order. She was the pulse that gave coherence back to a world coming undone. And perhaps that was the true conspiracy. Not a secret plan among businessmen and designers, but a tacit agreement between beauty and power, to remind the world that even in its chaos, elegance could still be an act of faith. In the end, when the names dissolve and the runways go dark, only one question remains. Who truly designed the history of modern luxury? It was not Chanel, nor Dior, nor Valentino. It was a woman who never held a needle, yet stitched with her silence the invisible threads of desire. Jackie Kennedy did not invent fashion. She purified it, stripped it of noise, of artifice, of vulgar ambition, turned it into a private religion, where style is not shouted, it is breathed. Her legacy does not fit in a museum. It lives in every contained gesture, in every neutral color, in every elegant shadow that needs no explanation. Her presence lives on every time a woman chooses silence over showing off, every time simplicity defeats excess. Fashion houses still try to capture her. They dedicate collections, handbags, perfumes to her. But no one can reproduce what cannot be manufactured, a coherence between what one wears and what one is. Because Jackie did not simply represent elegance, she proved that the most sophisticated power is the one that is never announced. And that power, her calm, her measure, her mystery, still sets the rhythm for everything luxury aspires to become. They say her Chanel suit remains guarded in a chamber of silence, that her Cartier watch still beats under a white light, that her Hermès scarves retain the perfume of the wind. Perhaps it's true, but her real treasure is not there. It is in the collective memory, in that corner of the imagination, where a woman, standing between history and tragedy, decided that elegance was not a way of dressing, but a way of resisting. Jackie didn't buy shares. She didn't design dresses. But she redesigned the soul of luxury. And as long as brands aspire to eternity, she will remain there, watching from her impeccable shadow, as the woman who turned silence into the most beautiful sound in fashion.